Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Dynasty After Dark. I'm your host, Calvin Timms. You can find me over on Twitter at TDC_Calvin or on the Dynasty After Dark YouTube and Rumble channels. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you haven't seen over the last couple weeks, I've been trying to pump out a lot more premium content for you guys. Started a couple weeks ago with the 3 riskiest players inside the top 12 that I had fears about going into 2022 and beyond. Followed that up with the best buys outside the top 12 at each position that I had the best odds of finishing inside for 2022 and beyond. And today I wanted to start with the quarterback top tier rankings for Dynasty football for me. And one thing before we get into the tiers here, I just wanted to point out that the reason why I'm doing it tier-based versus individual rankings, and I'll have individual rankings inside each tier, that's fine, but when it gets to a tier, I'm happy with any of those guys. There might be splitting hair differences between number 1 and number 2, but if they're in the same tier, I'd be literally happy with either one. You're never going to see a trade of those guys 1 for 1, and you're never going to see a trade for them at all pretty much ever because it's just so hard to... You'd have to add so many pieces just to, split that gap between number 1 and number 2 or number 8 and number 9, right? So I like to do it by a tier-based system. I just think it's the most accurate way to do it because it just kind of lets people know who you're okay with in that tier, and you can just target someone in the tier versus the individual player. So first off, before we get into the tiers here, if you guys could like, comment, and subscribe on the video wherever you're listening to it, on YouTube, Rumble, or on Spotify, Apple, anything like that, just to help with the podcast, get it out there to more people. And also, if you like the content here today, please tell the podcast about it just one friend. Just trying to get the podcast growing a little bit, and I got quite a few listeners here out there that are pretty dedicated listeners, which I truly appreciate. You guys, if you could just help me out, just tell one person about the podcast, I'd appreciate it. That's all I'm asking. So shameless plug aside, thank you guys for tuning in. Now let's get into it. All right, for tier 1, I got 3 guys here. I've got Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Justin Herbert. Now, my individual ranking of these guys goes in that order. Mahomes is number 1 for 2022 and beyond. He's 26 years old. He's been in the league for 5 years so far, and he's been a top 5 quarterback every year that he started except for one. He finished as the number 7 quarterback that year. So he's very, very good. He's probably the best quarterback right now in the NFL in terms of actual real-life football. And when it comes to fantasy, that definitely follows. So the nice thing about Patrick Mahomes is he's got a great offensive system, and Andy Reid is still a great offensive coordinator. The biggest downside of him, though, is everyone was wondering what would happen with Patrick Mahomes after he lost someone like Tyreek Hill or Travis Kelce. Well, this year they got rid of Tyreek Hill. They traded him away, and they are going to see what they can do without him. They still have Travis Kelce, but he's definitely getting older, a little bit more risky there. But they replaced Tyreek Hill with 3 guys. They replaced him with Juju Smith-Schuster, MVS, Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and then also they replaced him with, who was it? The rookie Sky Moore as well in the draft. So I really like the stability of this offense long term. They've shown that they're not too worried about the weapons. It's not the weapons that makes Patrick Mahomes great. It's Patrick Mahomes that makes everyone good on top of it. And Patrick Mahomes as a talent, he's very mobile. Over the last few years, averages about 2 rushing touchdowns a year, which is fine. That's not great, but about 300 yards on the ground, which is a lot of additional points on top of it. Then you add in his passing touchdowns, 37 last year, 38 the year before. His down year, QB7 year, he had 26. Oh no, but 50 the year before that. The dude is just a machine for fantasy points, and I love him quite a bit, and I think that going forward, he's probably the safest. He's got the most stable condition around him. There's not a ton of change, and the Chiefs are committed to making him just a stud for fantasy football. Now, that does lead to my number 2 guy here, Josh Allen, and the reason why I have him just slightly behind Patrick Mahomes for fantasy football is very simple. If you look at him in PPR formats, well, it doesn't really matter for quarterback, but standard quarterback scoring, Josh Allen has finished as the quarterback number 1 the last 2 seasons. 2 years ago, he was number 8. So, yeah, he's been very, very good the last 3 years. The biggest difference between him and someone like Patrick Mahomes is he's got a lot of touchdowns. That's great. Few more interceptions than someone like Mahomes, but that rushing is just so good for Josh Allen, right? That is what makes him an elite fantasy option. Is they really don't have a great running game, and they just like to utilize Josh Allen in that system. Now, if you look at his stats, he's had 122, 102, 109 carries over the last couple years. Everything that the Buffalo Bills have said over the last 2 seasons is they want to get that rushing number down for Josh Allen. Now, I'm going to believe what they're saying. And first off, they lost Brian Daboll. So they lost their offensive coordinator. He's going to be the head coach of the New York Giants. And they are going with someone new in-house. So that's not necessarily bad, but I just don't think that they're going to be as creative as Brian Daboll. Brian Daboll has had rumors about going to be an offensive coordinator somewhere for multiple seasons, but he has not been able to do it yet. Just hasn't been the right time. Him leaving is going to be a big impact on this offense. So it's going to change right there. Then what did they do in the draft? 2nd round pick on James Cook, the rookie running back that they brought in here. Dalvin Cook's little brother, if you haven't heard. And the dude is a very electric runner. Not a very big guy. He's kind of undersized, but if he bulks on 10 pounds, he could definitely be an Austin Eckler type of running back in the NFL. They are trying to get more carries on the running back position and take more stress off of Josh Allen, because with the additional rushing comes additional injury risk, and that's something that they don't want to see for Josh Allen. He has not gotten injured yet, which is luckily, knock on wood, something that we're all happy for and grateful for, but you can never count on that. There's never a guarantee that when you rush that much as a quarterback, you're not going to get injured. So they want to take more rushing off of Josh Allen and kind of move that more towards the running backs. But Josh Allen is still an elite option. You can see it here in some of these highlights. Gabe Davis right there. He is so good, and his arm might be better than Patrick Mahomes. He has just a cannon, a massive right arm, and I think that he's going to continue to improve in that area. Might have more than 40 touchdowns this year and take a step forward there, but I just think that the rushing is going to come down, and that's going to be the biggest impact on Josh Allen's fantasy value. But that said, I still think that he's one of the safest quarterbacks in the NFL right now, and that's why I have him in this top tier. Even if he does lose a step in the rushing, man, he's just so good. You can see the highlights here. He's just so good through the air, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. So he is in the top tier for me. Number 3 here, we got Justin Herbert, and Justin Herbert is younger, much younger than the other 2 here. He's only got 2 years of experience and definitely an up-and-comer, but very, very exciting. And I really like Justin Herbert and what he is showing us for fantasy football. 2 years ago, rookie season as a rookie, quarterback number 9. That is crazy good value from someone that everyone said shouldn't even be a first-round pick. Don't let people change that narrative on you. Justin Herbert was talked about as not even being a first-round pick. Last year finishes quarterback number 2, and the best part about him is he's kind of like a Patrick Mahomes type of player. He's got a lot of passing touchdowns, and he's got a ton of yardage. 5,000 yards last year. I know it's only one extra game, but man, just absolutely great right there. But then he, just like Patrick Mahomes, about 300 yards on the ground the last couple seasons. He could definitely even eclipse that. He could have Josh Allen type of numbers. Justin Herbert is a monster of a quarterback. 6'6", 236 pounds. And he ran like a 4.5 40 or something like that. He is lightning quick. So Justin Herbert is an elite athlete. We've seen what he can do through the air, and I just love him so much. You couple that with the head coach, Brandon Staley, and his love of analytics and, risk taking, more fourth down attempts. I just think for fantasy football, you could definitely do worse than Justin Herbert. And I think that he's shown us through 2 years that he is going to be a stud in the NFL for years to come. And I think that he's going to really kind of show why he's so safe over the next couple of years. So Justin Herbert, elite athlete, finished number 2 last year. And I don't like rewarding guys based on what they did last year, but the fact that he's going into year 3 and he's been that good, it just tells me that that's all you need to know. So I love Justin Herbert. He is the last guy in the top tier for me. All right, tier number two here. These guys are a little bit down. They're a little bit riskier in my opinion. And I'll talk about that with each one of them, but it's Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, and Deshaun Watson. And the reason why these guys are a tier down from those top 3, I think that they're all very, very good quarterbacks, but they all have a little bit more inherent risk to their game than the top 3. The top 3, those guys are all monsters of human beings. They're just big quarterbacks. They're all 6'3", 230 pounds or more. They're the prototypical size of quarterback. Then you got someone like Kyler Murray, who's 5'10", 207 pounds. He's a thick dude, but he is very short, and that's not great for the quarterback position because you got to be able to see down the field. You add into that, Kyler Murray is someone who is a lot more mobile, and he's had quite a few injuries over the last couple of years. Last year, missed 2 games, and he's been banged up the years before, but hasn't missed a ton of time due to it. I think just a couple quarters in the games before that. But Kyler Murray, the biggest risk with him is just his size. And I don't think it's a limiting factor, but I just think it limits him from being number 1 overall. Now, last year he finished as quarterback 10, missed 2 games. That's still pretty freaking good for missing 2 games. And then 2 years ago, quarterback number 3, number 6. And I've talked about Kyler Murray for a couple years now. He is the perfect combination of someone like Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. Very electric runner on the ground, but also a just very smooth passer. He has the limitation of being so short that he can't always see the field the best when he's in the pocket, but that's where his legs come in handy, where he can shift out of the pocket, show some open lanes there, find the open lanes, and then he can really just deliver the ball well downfield. You can see it a little bit here. And I love that for Kyler Murray. Now, this is one where he just stays in the pocket, right? The pocket you can see it there. The pocket opened up underneath. They didn't really crowd the middle of the pocket and collapse the pocket in on Kyler Murray. But when it does happen to him, he just shifts out and really shows his ability to throw such a pretty ball on the outside of the field. So I love Kyler Murray for that. I'm just a little nervous about him because of his size. A couple big hits, and you see what happened last year with the ankle and all that stuff. So Kyler Murray, I still love him for fantasy football. I think that he has the ability to finish as a top 3 quarterback as he did 2 years ago, but it's just a little bit of a risk. Now, behind him, we got Lamar Jackson, and Lamar Jackson is one of the most electric runners I've ever seen in the NFL. He is just so much fun to watch play football, and I know he missed a ton of time last year because of the ankle injury, I think it was. He only played 12 games out of 17, missed 5 games, finished as quarterback number 15. 2 years ago, quarterback number 10. But 2 years ago, last year he finished as quarterback 10. 2 years ago, he finished as the number 1 overall quarterback. The last couple seasons, we've seen his rushing come down just a tiny bit each one of those years. The year that he finished as the number 1 overall quarterback, he had 1,200 yards, 7 rushing touchdowns, and 36 passing touchdowns. 2 years ago, 26 passing touchdowns, and then a dip of 200 yards through the ground. And then last year, 16 touchdowns, only 767 yards, but through 12 games. Now, the biggest thing for Lamar Jackson is the risk of his quarterbacking ability. And I don't mean that as disrespectful to Lamar Jackson. I know there's the meme that he's the running back, right? He's just a running back playing quarterback. And I don't believe that at all. I'll joke on it sometimes because I think it's so outlandishly untrue. But Lamar Jackson is an electric runner. There's no question about that. He has a very, very good arm. It's just not been utilized the most. I don't think that he has the best offensive system around him to utilize him through the air. They do use him through, they are very good at maximizing his rushing abilities. Through 12 games, he had almost 800 yards. That's crazy how much he can run the ball and how well he can do it. And that just gives him such a solid floor for fantasy football. But we need to see him take a little bit of a step forward in the passing game to be a little bit more consistent there. And I think that he can. I like Lamar Jackson's arm quite a bit, but it's just not the most consistent arm. And that's what scares me a little bit there. So you can see it here. Dude just, oh my goodness, just takes off so easy, so fluid. It's crazy what you can see. If you're listening to the podcast, I apologize. I've been adding a little bit of clips here to this video, trying to make it more enjoyable for the people watching over on YouTube. But the dude is just so smooth. He can make all the throws. He can make all the definitely all the runs, but we just need to see him take a step forward in the passing game. And I think that he can do that this year. I know they got rid of Marquise Hollywood Brown and they're going to be leaning on Rashad Bateman, but I've always said that Rashad Bateman's a little bit more of a prototypical, target for someone like Lamar Jackson because he doesn't like to throw it to the outsides of the field. He's not the most accurate quarterback. Very strong arm. He can make all the throws, but he doesn't like those back shoulder throws as much. Not saying he can't do it, but he just doesn't prefer them. So he likes to target the guys over the middle of the field, and that is where Rashad Bateman will thrive. Where Hollywood Brown, he's more of a speedster, right? He's someone that's going to burn by someone, and you got to place it more accurately for him. And that's why I like him better with Kyler Murray than someone like Lamar Jackson. So I think that Rashad Bateman is going to massively help Lamar Jackson this year, and we're going to see a return to the MVP season, Lamar Jackson, when he had 36 touchdowns, because I think between Mark Andrews and Rashad Bateman, you get J.K. Dobbins in there, I think it's going to be a massive turnaround for fantasy football for Lamar Jackson. The risk with him is just the reason why he's in tier 2 here. We don't know for sure what his arm is going to be with this receiving core. It's not an exciting receiving core, don't get me wrong. It's a capable one, but not an exciting one. So we will see what he can do. Now, the last guy here, if you did listen to my 3 riskiest players inside the top 12, is Deshaun Watson. He was on that list. And the reason why is we just don't know enough right now. But based on pure talent, because I'm taking the off the field stuff out of the equation, all available information says that we're talking between either 6 games or a year suspension, somewhere in that range. It's unlikely he gets nothing, but it's also unlikely that he gets suspended forever. So he will be back. Deshaun Watson, if you haven't remembered, is very, very good at football. He is very electric. And this is from 2020. These highlights that you can see here on YouTube. The dude is just so good. He makes it so effortlessly. And I am excited to see him play football. I don't like the dude for the off the field stuff, but it's just, it's hard to root for the guy. And I get that. I completely understand that. But yeah, we just know what he can do, and I think that the talent is definitely there, that it's going to pay off if he can play. So last year didn't play at all for the Houston Texans. Well, the 3 years before that, all 3 of them finished as quarterback number 5. Very good touchdown to interception ratio, very safe with the ball. And then he has quite a few rushing attempts on the ground as well. Averages about 450 to 500 yards there on the ground. Gives him a nice solid floor there. You add in the passing work that he does have there as well, and it's very, very good. So Deshaun Watson, whatever your feelings about him are, and I know that it's been a while since we've seen him play, he is only 26 years old. He is going to be returning to an elite form whenever he does get on the field, whether it's this season or not. Now, with Kevin Stefanski and this offense, there's going to be a lot of rushing, so his rushing floor will be just fine. He might not have a ton of rushing touchdowns, but to finish QB5 2 years ago, last time he played in 2020, he only had 3 rushing touchdowns. The years before that, 5 and 7. I mean, that's a lot better, but he could definitely get vultured by Nick Chubb quite a bit and still finish as a top 6 quarterback for fantasy football if he plays the whole season, right? And I don't think that's going to happen, but I think once he starts playing this season, he's going to be an elite option yet again. So I think that you should get Watson while you can, but at the same time, there's definitely a risk for at least 2022 that he might not play this year. That's the only risk when it comes to Deshaun Watson. Once he's back, he's going to be a solid quarterbacking option for fantasy football. Whether you like the guy or not, you got to admit what he can do on the field. And at only 26 years old, we could definitely have another 10 years of Deshaun Watson. And for Dynasty football, that is more than enough. We've seen these guys, when they are elite early, they last for so long in fantasy football. So don't let your feelings of Deshaun Watson, and whatever you feel about Watson, I get it. I really do. It's not worth it for fantasy football. So that leads us right here to tier number 3. All right, tier number 3 here. We got 3 guys: Dak Prescott, Russell Wilson, and Joe Burrow. And the reason why these guys are in tier number 3, a tear drop there from Kyler Murray, Lamar Jackson, and Deshaun Watson, is because all 3 of these guys, I don't think that they can do it without elite talent around them. And that sounds a little bit harsh, but for fantasy football, all 3 of these guys have been loaded around them for in terms of weapons and offensive line and things like that. Joe Burrow, not the offensive line, but the weapons piece of it, right? But Dak Prescott, he has been a roller coaster in terms of fantasy football over the last couple of years. Rookie year, came out as quarterback number 7. Year after that, quarterback 10. 14 after that, number 2. 32 the year that he got injured. Okay, wash that one out. And then number 8 last year. So he's been up and down. And that year that he finished number 14 is actually the year that they got Amari Cooper, because their receiving core was just terrible. So you can see the downgrade from year number 1 to year number 2, 7 to 10. The receiving options did not get better that year. They got much, much worse. Year 2 to year 3 got even worse. Halfway through the year, they traded for Amari Cooper, and that saved his fantasy season that year. But goes from number 14 to number 2 the year after that. He's had Amari Cooper ever since. The Dallas Cowboys have moved on from Amari Cooper. They have CeeDee Lamb, which is a great option, but him and Dak Prescott just do not seem to have the rapport that him and Amari Cooper have had over the last couple of years. But behind CeeDee Lamb, they have rookie Jalen Tolbert, Michael Gallup, and a newly added James Washington on this team. Dalton Schultz as the tight end. You got Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. It's a decent core of weapons, but it definitely needs some work. And Michael Gallup, starting off injured, coming off the ACL tear in the playoffs last year, not a great situation. So the only thing with Dak Prescott is I don't know if we can trust him for fantasy football, just because of the fact that we've never seen him be able to perform at an elite level without a ton of weapons around him. Not saying that he can't do it. I just think that makes him a little bit riskier than someone like Lamar Jackson, who has that insane built-in floor because of all the rushing that we've seen. So I think that Dak Prescott, he's still very young. Don't get me wrong. I love the talent there. I just want to be able to see a little bit more from him this year. If he can really produce well this year, and maybe he gets a little bit more of that rushing back, because last year was the first year off the ankle injury. You could kind of see it a little bit there that he wasn't playing the best. At times, it seemed like he favored it a little bit, and these are highlights from that year. But you can see how good someone like CeeDee Lamb is. But I think Amari Cooper is going to be a massive loss for this team, and I think that Dak Prescott is going to struggle a little bit. And then whatever you think about Michael Gallup and Jalen Tolbert, they're unproven. Like, I like Michael Gallup, but he gets way too much credit, in my opinion, versus some of these guys out there as proven talent, and I don't know if he is that yet. So there's just a little bit of risk around Dak Prescott. Ultimately, he's my quarterback 7, first in this tier 3, but I still love the talent quite a bit there. Now, right behind him, we have Russell Wilson. And the only reason why I have him a little bit below Dak Prescott in this tier is just because of age. He is 33, a lot older than a lot of these guys in the top 10. I think he's got about 5 years on most of them at least. But Russell Wilson, very good quarterback. Probably top 5 in terms of actual NFL quarterbacks, in my opinion. I've been a big Russ fan over the last few years, but he is a little bit shorter. He's kind of the first Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray built his game off of Russ a little bit there, but Russell Wilson is now with the Denver Broncos in 2022. So that's a little bit of a change. But again, we've never really seen Russ without elite options with the Seattle Seahawks. And say what you will about the passing weapons over the last couple of years, but DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, Doug Baldwin before that. He had Beast Mode, Marshawn Lynch, Percy Harvin, I think it was, before that, when he was playing his best. Russell Wilson has always had elite options. Luckily for him, he should still have pretty elite options with Cortland Sutton, Tim Patrick, and Jerry Jeudy, and then the running backs of Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon. So definitely didn't see a drop-off there, but if you were to lose some of those guys, which I don't think they will anytime soon, you could just definitely see a potential risk with Russell Wilson. Now, I will say one of the biggest risks with Russell Wilson has been the let Russ cook movement. Russell Wilson could absolutely explode this year with the new head coach that he has right now. And coming over from Green Bay, we've seen what Aaron Rodgers can do with this system. If they really lean on Russell Wilson through the air like they do with Aaron Rodgers over in Green Bay, this could be a beautiful combination over here in Denver. So maybe number 8 overall is a little bit low on Russell Wilson, but I understand it. I definitely can see the upside for Russ, but at the same time, I just think there's a little bit more inherent risk, and then also the age factor as well. Now, you could have 5 years maybe of elite Russell Wilson, maybe even more. He stays in pretty good shape, but I just think that if it was me, I'd prefer one of those other 6 over him for the foreseeable future. But you look at his record, he's got 10 years of experience at this point in time. Yeah, he's been top 10 every year except for his rookie year and last year because of the injury where he missed 3 games. So Russell Wilson is a machine. He is going to return as well. And I think that this is a very good buying opportunity. I have not heard much hype around Russell Wilson after the trade to the Broncos. Maybe you've seen it in your leagues, but I just personally have not seen it as much. He seems to be the one that everyone seems to be sleeping on a little bit more than some of the other guys. So he definitely has the opportunity personally to jump up into tier 2, but right now it just felt kind of right to put him in the number 3 tier here. But you can see some of the highlights here over on YouTube. Dude is he's got one of the prettiest deep balls I think I've ever seen. The moon ball that he has is just so disgusting. I love it. So Russell Wilson, definitely someone that could make a step forward in 2022 and 2023, but the age factor does lead him to be a little bit lower for me. So yeah, just highlights for days. It will be interesting to see who his number 1 target is going to be over here in this offense, though. That's the one question everybody has over here. So we'll see what they can do. But yeah, great option right there. Now, the number 3 guy here in this tier, the last guy in this tier, is going to be Joe Burrow. And Joe Cool is, he's someone that is rocketing up draft boards right now. For me, number 9 overall seems about right. I think that people are crowning him just because of what we saw in the playoffs and what we saw him going to the Super Bowl and everything. And people are rewarding him a little bit too much, in my opinion. But he's a very good quarterback. He's very young. It's just his game is a little more limited than some of these other guys. Last year, he had 40 attempts on the ground for 118 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. That's not bad, but 118 yards means that he's almost purely a pocket passing quarterback. And I think with his knee injury, I just don't really see him doing too much on the ground. Maybe they can up it a little bit more in 2022 and beyond. His rookie year through 10 games, he had 142 yards. So it's a little bit more of an average, not a ton more. Would have got him about 225 yards roughly if he would have played a whole season that year. But yeah, I just don't think that he's ever going to be much on the ground. And if that's the case, then you're relying on him to strictly do it all through the air. Now, luckily for him, he has amazing receiving options and a completely rebuilt offensive line. So that is a very good piece of the puzzle here for the Cincinnati Bengals and Joe Burrow. But yeah, I think that the downside is when you have to rely strictly on the air. Luckily he has Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, 2 top 10 Dynasty wide receivers right now based on rankings. You can definitely do that, but it's just very hard to sustain every single year. So we'll see what he can do, especially with the rebuilt offensive line. They might try to run the ball a little bit more. One of the things was he talked about this after the season. He really tried to take on more sacks last year because he thought that by buying more time, he could open up more plays down the field and he could get more passes completed to someone like Jamar Chase, someone like T. Higgins or Joe Mixon. But with the rebuilt offensive line, they might not need to lean on that as much. Maybe they lean on Joe Mixon or Samaje Perine a little bit more and take a little bit away from Justin Herbert. And again, if everything for Justin Herbert is through the air, taking any yardage away from him, any touchdowns away from him, that's just going to massively hurt his fantasy value. So I think that number 9 overall is a good place for Joe Burrow. I think that he's going to consistently be top 10, but I think of him more as like a young Phillip Rivers in fantasy football. Always going to be right on the edges, but never elite. And that's the problem with Joe Burrow. I think that he's a very good real life quarterback. I think that he's the dude. He's got the moxie and the attitude that you want your quarterback to have. But for fantasy, I just don't see him ever being elite without like a 50 touchdown season. And even then, without any rushing on the ground, I think that he's just way too limited by that piece of it personally. So he's a very good quarterback, but yeah, I think that there's just a little bit of a weakness to his game in that he's such a pocket passing quarterback on that front. All right, so that's the end of tier 3. And again, these guys are just a little bit more risky. Going back through the top tier, I just don't see much risk with these guys. They've been good their whole careers, basically. Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, and Patrick Mahomes. Tier number 2, they got a little bit more risk. There's just some negatives to their game or, the off the field stuff with Deshaun Watson. Then tier 3, these guys, you just need to have an elite offense around them for them to do really well. Luckily, again, all 3 of them, Dak Prescott, maybe the weakest offense out of all 3 of these guys. But I just think that there's definitely potential for them to fall off. If, let's say, something were to happen to T. Higgins or Jamar Chase, that would have a massive impact on someone like Joe Burrow, where I think that if Tyreek Hill would have gotten injured for Patrick Mahomes, it would have been okay because it's more of Patrick Mahomes versus the weapons. This tier, it's more the weapons than the quarterback, but I could be wrong there. You can let me know your thoughts over on YouTube. Now, the last tier I want to talk about, tier 4 here. These are definitely the guys where you need a good system around them or things go to hell. But they're good enough where I think that they're reliable and safe enough for the next couple of years that you'll be able to use them quite a bit. But they definitely need a good system around them to perform for fantasy football. Now, the top guy in this tier for me is going to be Matt Stafford. And surprisingly, he might actually be the cheapest of these guys. Maybe not. Maybe it's Kirk Cousins. I can't really tell. But sorry, if you're listening on audio, this tier 4 is going to be Matt Stafford, Kirk Cousins, and Jalen Hurts. Matt Stafford, I have not heard much about him despite him winning a Super Bowl. He's 34 years old, so he is a little bit older, but I don't think that he plans on giving it up anytime soon. Finished his quarterback number 5 last year with Sean McVay. Maybe it's the potential Sean McVay rumors of him retiring that's got people a little bit more down on Matt Stafford, but man, the dude is just such a good quarterback. But much like Joe Burrow, right? He has no ground game whatsoever to his game. He had 32 attempts last year for 43 yards. Basically, they were like, kneel downs essentially and a few big runs. That's all he did last year on the ground. But it doesn't matter when you got someone like Sean McVay to scheme up everything, and you got such a great connection with someone like Cooper Kupp, right? Where Matt Stafford last year had 404 completions for 4,900 yards. He had 41 touchdowns and 17 interceptions. So very good statistical season. You just got to see a lot of weapons around him for him to continue that, though, because he has no rushing to his game. Then you add in the age factor. I do get it why people are a little bit more down on Matt Stafford, but I've loved Matt Stafford for many years now. When he was working his way out of Detroit, I really hoped that the New England Patriots were going to get him in some fashion, but he came out and said he didn't want to play for the Patriots, which fair enough. It worked out well for him going over to the Rams, but I love Matt Stafford. I'm so happy that he was able to win a Super Bowl. He's been disrespected for so long in his career, so great to see that happen for him. But yeah, he might actually be the cheapest of these options. Again, I don't know if people are just down on him because of the situation or what, but I have not heard anything about Matt Stafford this year. So that's my thoughts on Matt Stafford. I really like him quite a bit, but I just think that, yeah, there's definitely the risk with no rushing potential whatsoever. All right, the next guy here is going to be Kirk Cousins, and we're almost to the end here, so I'm losing my voice a little bit. My wife was so kind to get me sick, or my boys got me sick. I don't really know. Somebody got me sick, and my voice has been going out a little bit, but we'll see if I can make it through the end of the podcast here. Now, Kirk Cousins is number 11 for me here for Dynasty quarterbacks. He's only 33 years old. I know Kirk Cousins, he's got that kind of that dad vibe to him where he feels like he's 100 years old, but 40 rivaling Aaron Rodgers, but he's only 33. He's younger than Matt Stafford. I think that he's going to be around for many more years. I think that he's just going to try and play till he's about 39, 40 years old. He keeps himself in really good condition. He has basically almost never missed a regular season game except for 2019 when they went to the playoffs. They sat him that last week, and that's the only game that he's missed. He's not missed a game since he became a starter in 2015. The dude is an Iron Man. He just does not miss time due to injury. So Kirk Cousins, a lot to like about him. His 3 years in Washington, he was actually top 10 in quarterback rankings, end of year finish. Last 4 years with Minnesota, he's been 13, 19, 11, and 11. That's definitely tied a lot more to the Mike Zimmer offense here than anything else. And we're going to see what we can do now because they've got Kevin O'Connell as the new head coach. They've moved on from Mike Zimmer. Kevin O'Connell coming over from the Rams. So you know that this is going to get a lot more explosive for fantasy football. So I think Kirk Cousins is a great dynasty buy. I don't know who's cheaper between him and Stafford. Probably Cousins, to be honest with you. Nobody likes Kirk Cousins. Even Vikings fans don't seem to like Kirk Cousins, which I do not understand whatsoever. But Kirk Cousins is a good quarterback, man. Last year, they were in so many games because of Kirk Cousins that they should not have been in because their defense was terrible. And Mike Zimmer made so many terrible decisions as a head coach. Like, full respect to him. He is a good coach. He's a good defensive mind, but he was just so old school, and it was just so bad to watch. It hurt my eyeballs to watch him so many times last year. And the problem with Mike Zimmer is, yeah, he was just so conservative that he didn't let Kirk Cousins really uncork his arm, which is one of the best arms in the league, surprisingly, from someone like Kirk Cousins. But he's one of the best deep ball passers just in the NFL. But yeah, every single year since he's been a starter, he's had over 4,000 yards, 33 touchdowns last year. Not a ton on the ground. He always does a little bit, gets a couple of additional games, but the last couple of years, the biggest thing with Kirk Cousins was for many, many years, he was very unreliable as a quarterback, as a starting quarterback for your roster. But the last 2 years, he's really turned that around with the Vikings. And I think that this year is going to be another step in that direction. So I'm excited to see what Kirk Cousins can do. But yeah, I think that it's going to be a good situation for fantasy football. Again, 33 years old. You could have another 5 years of Kirk Cousins and you're paying nothing for him. I think that he's relatively safe. Maybe he moves down a little bit if some of the guys in later tiers jump up here, but I think that he's just very solid. He's a very solid quarterback, very bland, not exciting. I get it. It's Kirk Cousins. You just watch any video on him and you're not excited by it, but I think that you could definitely do worse in super flex leagues if you need a quarterback than Kirk Cousins. Now, the last guy I want to talk about here is going to be Jalen Hurts before my voice ultimately goes out. But Jalen Hurts is someone that you're probably asking, why is he in this tier? I think that Jalen Hurts is going to make it long term. I think that he's going to be the starter for the Philadelphia Eagles past 2022. They're going to commit to him on a long-term contract, and I think that he is good enough that he's going to earn it. Now, the biggest thing with Jalen Hurts is you can see a couple of the highlights here on YouTube. The dude is good. He is a good player, and the biggest downside with him has been his passing work so far. Now, can he fix that? Yes, he's got 2 years of experience. He played 4 games basically in 2020, right? He didn't play very many games. He started 3.5 games in 2020. Last year started the full 16, 17, missed 2 games. Sorry, he missed week 18 because they pulled him. And then week 13, he did have an injury. He was nicked up a little bit. Finished as quarterback number 9. Passing work definitely needs a step up. He had 265 completions for 3,100 yards and 16 touchdowns with 9 interceptions. That's horrible. That is horrendous for football, for real life football. But the upside, he had 784 yards on the ground with 10 rushing touchdowns. Now, I think that they're going to continue that. He's going to be not a Lamar Jackson type of runner, but he's going to be more of a Kyler Murray, right? Who had that perfect combination, like I talked about, of Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. I think that he's going to be more of a Kyler type of runner. He's a lot bigger dude than Kyler. He's 6'1", 223 pounds. Jalen Hurts is a thick guy. He's a muscular guy. But if he can improve his passing game work at all, then he is going to be a monster for fantasy football. Now, what have the Philadelphia Eagles done this offseason? They still have Devonta Smith. They traded a first-round pick for A.J. Brown, paid him a lot of money to be the number 1 team player for this team. They added Zach Pascal from a free agency from the Indianapolis Colts, which Zach Pascal, all he's really done for the Colts has been useful for getting touchdowns. He's not a good fantasy player, but he's a good number 3 who replaces Jalen Reagor as the number 3 on this team. I still like Jalen Reagor. I would like to see him get traded to another team. I think that he can definitely be utilized somewhere else, but I just don't think that he's a good fit for someone like Jalen Hurts. Now, much like Lamar Jackson, where he needs a little bit of help across the middle of the field because he's not the best outside passer. I think the same thing is Jalen Hurts' game as well. And that's why it's really hindered him for fantasy football. They don't have the best receivers for that so far. Jalen Reagor is more of a Hollywood Brown type of guy, speed guy on the outside. He's not going to be someone that's going to really high point the ball if it's not the best pin perfect pass, right? But Jalen Reagor is someone that is going to be a good receiver, I still believe, for another team. But Devonta Smith, he's someone that can get open. So if Jalen Hurts can improve his reading ability of the defense, Devonta Smith is going to have a massive breakout there. But A.J. Brown is such a contested catch monster that he's going to really thrive with Jalen Hurts. They are a perfect combination of skill and opportunity there for each other. So I'm really expecting a step forward in 2022 from Jalen Hurts, and I think that he's going to earn the starting job for the Philadelphia Eagles for the next couple years, which makes him a much safer option for fantasy football. And again, I think that if that's the case, then you got to buy him now, because people that own Jalen Hurts in fantasy football, you got 2 camps. they're either extremely nervous that they have 1 year left on the guy, or they believe in him wholeheartedly, right? There's no fear whatsoever. So, you got to find out who has him in your league, see what type of camp they're in. If they're a little nervous at all, I would definitely go and try and get Jalen Hurts for cheap, because I believe in the guy long term, and I think you should too. All right, with that said, we're at 45 minutes on this video. I'm trying to keep it as condensed as possible. I'm going to be doing these for the running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends here this week. My top tier guys for all of those, and then I'll probably follow it up next week or the next couple weeks with the next tier guys for each of these positions. But let me know what your thoughts are over on Twitter at TDC_Calvin. Thank you guys so much for listening. And again, if you like this content, please tell one friend about it. Like, comment, and subscribe on the video. Just help the video get out there to more people. I truly appreciate you guys listening. All the people that do listen to this podcast, I really appreciate you guys. It means a lot to me that people value my opinion on stuff, which is crazy. I'm doing this to help people, but at the same time, you got to prove that you have something to say. And the fact that you guys listen to it definitely means a lot to me. So thank you guys so much. Have a good night.